The cargo ship drifted through empty space like a leaf on a dark river. Inside the small cockpit, Doyen checked the navigation screens for the third time that hour. His hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, fingers rough from years of manual work before he became a pilot. Next to him, Hijin studied her own screen, tracking their fuel reserves and plotting the safest route to the human colony on Talvon 7. They were simple people doing simple work. Medical supplies needed delivery, and someone had to fly them there. The pay was decent, the risks were acceptable, and they asked for nothing more than that. Doyen never wanted to be special. He just wanted to do his job and go home. The warning alarm shattered the quiet. 3 massive warships appeared on their sensors, cutting off their path. The ships were Varathian, painted in deep red and black, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. Each ship was 10 times larger than their tiny cargo vessel. The Varathians controlled this region of space through military might and fear. Everyone knew to stay out of their way. Yijin tried to change course, but it was too late. A tractor beam locked onto their ship, pulling them toward the largest warship like a fish on a hook. Doyen felt his stomach tighten. This was bad, very bad. Armed Varathian soldiers boarded their ship within minutes. The aliens were massive, standing over 9 feet tall with thick scales covering their bodies. They had 4 arms, each one strong enough to bend steel. Their eyes were cold and yellow, looking at the 2 humans like they were insects. The soldiers dragged Doyen and Hyejin through metallic corridors that smelled of oil and ozone. Other aliens watched them pass, whispering among themselves. Some looked curious. Most looked amused. Humans were considered weak by Varathian standards, soft creatures from a nothing world, barely capable of space travel. They were thrown into a massive throne room. The ceiling stretched high above them, decorated with weapons and battle trophies from 100 conquered worlds. At the far end, sitting on a throne made from the hull of a destroyed starship, was Warlord Kresh. Kresh was even larger than the soldiers, his red scales polished to a mirror shine. Scars crossed his face and arms, each one a story of battle. In his upper right hand he held a long spear that seemed to glow with its own light. The Spear of Dominion. Every soldier in the room had heard the stories. The weapon was forged from compressed star metal, capable of cutting through ship armor. No warrior had ever broken it. No enemy had ever defeated Kresh while he held it. The Warlord looked down at them with obvious boredom. A smaller Varathian, wearing the marks of a commander, stepped forward. This was Valrix, Kresh's second officer. He spoke in rough but understandable human language. "You trespassed in Imperial space," Valrix said. "This crime carries a penalty. You will become slaves working in the mining colonies until you die." Hijin started to protest, but Doyen put a hand on her arm. He knew it would not help. Varathians did not negotiate with those they considered inferior. They took what they wanted and crushed anyone who resisted, but then Kresh raised one hand and the room fell silent. The Warlord leaned forward, studying Doyen with new interest. Perhaps he was bored. Perhaps he wanted entertainment. Whatever the reason, he made an offer. "I will give you a choice, human," Kresh said, his voice deep as thunder. "Break my spear with your bare hands and you both go free. Fail and you become slaves." "What do you say?" The entire court erupted in laughter. "Break the Spear of Dominion? With human hands? Impossible." Even another Varathian warrior could not accomplish such a feat. The spear had survived battles with creatures far stronger than any human. This was a cruel joke, giving false hope before crushing it. Doyen looked at Hyejin. She was terrified, but trying to hide it. He thought about the mining colonies, about dying slowly in darkness, digging minerals for the Empire. He thought about having no choice, no control over his own life. Then he looked back at Kresh. "I accept," Doyen said quietly. The laughter grew louder. Kresh smiled, showing sharp teeth, and stood. He walked down from his throne, each step making the floor shake slightly. He held the spear horizontally, gripping each end with 2 of his 4 hands. "Then try, little human," the Warlord said. "Show me your strength." Doyen approached slowly. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands were steady. He had worked construction before becoming a pilot. He understood materials, stress points, how force moved through structures. Everything had a weakness if you knew where to look. He gripped the spear at 2 points, about shoulder-width apart. The metal was warm, humming with energy. It felt alive under his fingers. The Varathians watched, still laughing, still certain of the outcome. Doyen took a deep breath and began to push. At first, nothing happened. The spear felt solid as stone, but he kept pushing, adjusting his grip, finding the angle. His muscles burned. Sweat ran down his face. The laughter began to fade. The spear was bending, just slightly, but it was bending. The energy field around it flickered and sparked. Doyen pushed harder, ignoring the pain as the heat burned his palms. He thought about his homeworld, Earth, with its heavy gravity. Humans evolved there, became strong just from standing upright. He thought about all the hours of manual labor, all the times he refused to quit when things got hard. The throne room was completely silent now. Every eye watched the impossible thing happening before them. The spear of dominion bent further, the curve becoming visible. Cracks appeared in the glowing metal. Kresh's eyes widened. For the first time in his long life, the warlord felt something close to fear. Doyen gave one final push, every muscle in his body straining. Blood dripped from his hands where the energy burned through skin. The spear shattered. The sound was like lightning striking metal. Pieces of star metal clattered to the floor, the glow fading from them. The energy field dissipated in a shower of sparks. The spear of dominion, undefeated for centuries, lay broken at the feet of a human cargo pilot. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then, as one, every warrior in the room dropped to one knee. It was automatic, ingrained through years of tradition. Whoever defeated the warlord's symbol of power earned their respect. The warrior code demanded it. Kresh stared at his empty hands. All forearms trembled. His mind struggled to accept what just happened. A human, a weak, soft human from a primitive world, broke the unbreakable. Doyen swayed on his feet, exhausted and in pain. He looked at Kresh, then at the kneeling warriors, then at Hyejin. She stood frozen, her mouth open in shock. "I want to leave now," Doyen said simply. The warlord nodded slowly, still unable to speak. Valrix rose and gestured toward the door. As Doyen and Hyejin walked toward the exit, the commander watched them with new eyes. Everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. Everything the Empire believed was wrong. When they reached the hangar, Valrix blocked their path one final time. But there was no threat in his posture. Only questions. "How?" Valrix asked. "How did you do that?" Doyen wrapped cloth around his burned hands and looked at the Varathian commander. "Everything breaks," he said. "You just have to know where to push." They boarded their ship and left. Behind them, in the throne room, Kresh still stood among the pieces of his broken spear. The invincible warlord had been defeated, and the entire empire would soon know about it. The galaxy would never be the same. They did not let Doyen and Hyejin leave, not as prisoners, but the distinction felt thin. Valrix explained it with careful words. The warlord needed time to recover. The situation required proper handling. They would be guests until matters settled. Translation: they were trapped. The quarters they received were better than any human colony housing. Soft beds, clean water, food that actually tasted good, but comfort did not equal freedom. Guards stood outside their door. Not to keep them in, Valrix insisted, for their protection. The distinction still felt thin. Kresh had not emerged from his war chamber since the spear shattered. 3 days passed in silence. The Shadow Legion soldiers moved through the fortress like ghosts, uncertain and afraid. Their entire existence revolved around the supremacy of Varathian warriors. Their warlord's invincible weapon lay broken by human hands. The foundation of their world had cracked. Doyen spent the time treating his burned hands and trying to understand what he had done. He explained it to Hyejin repeatedly. Physics, leverage, material science. She understood the mechanics. What she could not understand was why the Varathians cared so much. "It was just metal," she said, watching him wrap fresh bandages. "Expensive metal, sure, but still just metal." "To them it was more than that," Doyen replied. "It was a symbol, proof of their strength. And I broke it." Valrix visited them often. The commander asked questions. Hundreds of questions. About Earth, about human history, about how they thought, why they acted, what drove them. Doyen tried to answer honestly, but he was just a cargo pilot. He did not understand philosophy or sociology. He just did what needed doing. That answer seemed to frustrate Valrix more than anything else, but why? The commander asked again. They sat in a small observation room watching stars drift past. Why try when failure meant slavery? A Varathian would have accepted defeat with honor. Why did you choose to attempt the impossible? Doyen thought about it. Really thought about it. Because trying had a chance, he finally said. Small chance, maybe impossible chance, but still a chance. Not trying meant definite slavery. The math was simple. Simple. Balrix repeated like the word was foreign. You risked humiliation and pain for a tiny possibility of success. This is not logical. No, Doyen agreed. But it is human. News of the broken spear spread through the Empire like fire through dry grass. Communication was slow across the vastness of space, but gossip traveled faster than official reports. A human broke the spear of dominion. Warlord Kresh was defeated. The Shadow Legion knelt before a cargo pilot. Other species under Varathian rule heard the news. Slaves in mining colonies whispered about it. Workers in factories shared the story. If humans could accomplish the impossible, maybe they could too. Small acts of defiance began. Nothing major. A slowed work pace here. A damaged machine there. Requests for better conditions. The Empire's governors sent worried reports to the capital. Unrest was growing. The image of Varathian invincibility had a crack in it, and cracks spread. On the fourth day, Kresh finally emerged. The Warlord looked different. The arrogance was gone from his posture. His eyes, once cold and certain, now carried doubt. He walked through his fortress like a stranger in his own home. Warriors stepped aside quickly, unsure how to act around their changed leader. Kresh went directly to the observation room where Doyen and Hedgen waited. Balrix tried to follow, but the Warlord waved him away. This conversation needed to be private. The massive alien sat across from the two humans. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Doyen waited. He learned patience during his construction days. Sometimes the best thing was to be quiet and let others work through their thoughts. I have ruled this sector for 30 years, Kresh finally said. His voice was quieter than before, less thunder and more distant storm. 30 years of conquest, of battle, of victory. I believed Varathians were the peak of strength. I believed other species were weak because they could not match our power. He looked at his four hands, opening and closing them slowly. You showed me I was wrong, the Warlord continued, not through greater strength. You are smaller, weaker in raw muscle, but you did what I thought impossible. This troubles me greatly. I am sorry, Doyen said, and meant it. He never wanted to hurt anyone. He just wanted to go home. Kresh made a sound that might have been a laugh. Sorry, you apologize for being strong. This is very human, I think. Balrix has been researching your species. He tells me strange things. You are persistence hunters. You chase prey until it dies from exhaustion. You evolved on a heavy world. So your bodies are dense, your bones strong. You endure what other species cannot. The Warlord leaned forward. But that is not what interests me most. What interests me is why you kept pushing when the spear fought back, when your hands burned, when failure seemed certain. You did not stop. Why? Because stopping meant losing, Doyen said simply. As long as I kept trying, there was a chance. Hope. Kresh said the word carefully, like tasting something new. You had hope? I guess so. Another long silence. Hedgen watched the exchange nervously. She could see the Warlord thinking, processing, coming to some decision. She did not know if that decision would be good for them. I have a proposal, Kresh said finally. Train with the Shadow Legion for 1 month. Show them your methods. Learn ours. If humans truly have hidden strength, I want to understand it. Not to exploit, to learn. The Empire has grown comfortable, complacent. You remind me that we still have much to discover. And if I refuse? Doyen asked. Then you leave. I will honor my word. You broke the spear, you earned freedom. But I ask you to consider staying.
For 1 month.
As a teacher, not a prisoner. Doyen looked at Hedgen. She gave a small shake of her head. This was a trap. It had to be. But the Warlord seemed genuine, changed. And if Doyen left now, what would happen to the other humans in the Empire? What about those small rebellions starting on other worlds? Would they be crushed harder because of what he did? 1 month, Doyen said. Then we go home. Kresh nodded. 1 month. You have my oath. The Warlord stood and left. Hedgen immediately turned to Doyen. Are you insane? She demanded. This is obviously a trap. They will study you, find weaknesses in human biology, then use it against all of us. Maybe, Doyen admitted. But did you see his face? He is not the same Warlord who challenged me. Something changed in him. And if there is a chance, even a small one, that we can change things for the better, should we not try? You are going to get us killed, Hedgen said. But she did not argue further. She knew that look in his eyes. Doyen had made up his mind. That evening, a human diplomatic ship arrived at the fortress. Ambassador Soman came aboard, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and sharper words. Earth's government had finally learned what happened. They sent her to clean up the mess. She was not happy. "Do you understand what you have done?" Soman demanded, pacing the observation room. "You have destabilized the most powerful empire in this sector. You have made humanity a target. Earth does not have the military to fight the Varathians. We need peace, not provocation." "I did not mean to start anything," Doyen said. "I just wanted to survive." "Well, you started something anyway," Soman snapped. Then she sighed and sat down, suddenly looking tired. "I am supposed to negotiate your release and issue formal apologies. Smooth everything over, but Kresh refuses to see me. He says the matter is between you and him. Do you understand how unprecedented that is?" Doyen did not. Politics were not his strength. Soman explained it anyway. Warlords do not negotiate with individuals. They deal with governments, with power structures. By treating you as an equal worthy of personal agreement, Kresh is elevating you, making you important. This will have consequences. "What kind of consequences?" Hyejin asked. The ambassador looked at them both. "I do not know yet, but I will stay and find out. Someone needs to document this disaster." That night, Doyen could not sleep. He stood at the window watching distant stars. Somewhere out there, people were hearing about what he did, making decisions based on it, changing their lives because of one moment when he refused to give up. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who pushed too hard and broke something valuable. Now everyone expected him to know what to do next. He had no idea what to do next. The training grounds spread across 3 levels of the war fortress, filled with equipment designed for warriors twice Doyen's size. Heavy weights that required mechanical assistance to move, weapons built for 4-armed fighters, obstacle courses meant for species that could leap 20 feet straight up. Everything here reminded him that he did not belong. The Shadow Legion warriors made sure he knew it too. They gathered to watch his first training session like spectators at an execution. 50 elite soldiers, the best the Empire had, standing in silent judgment. Their scaled faces showed nothing, but Doyen felt their contempt like heat from a fire. Tanrek stepped forward from the crowd. The massive Varathian was covered in scars, each one earned in battle. He carried no weapons, but his 4 hands looked deadly enough on their own. He was the training master, responsible for preparing soldiers for war. And he clearly considered Doyen an insult to his profession. "The human who broke the spear," Tanrek said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Let us see if that was skill or luck. Spar with me. Show us human strength." There was no point arguing. Doyen moved to the center of the sparring circle. Tanrek followed, his movements fluid despite his size. The match began without ceremony. No countdown. No warning. Tanrek simply attacked. Doyen lasted maybe 5 seconds. The Varathian's strike came too fast to dodge. It caught Doyen in the chest and threw him across the circle. He hit the ground hard, his breath knocked out. Pain radiated through his ribs. He forced himself to stand. Tanrek attacked again. Again, Doyen went down, and again, and again. 10 times. 20. The pattern repeated until Doyen lost count. Each time he stood up slower, breathing harder, vision blurring. "Stay down," Tanrek finally said. "Not cruel, but tired. You have proven your courage." "No shame in admitting defeat." Doyen spat blood and stood up again. Confusion crossed Tanrek's face. "Why, you cannot win. This is not bravery. It is stupidity." "I agreed to train for a month," Doyen replied through split lips. "Training means getting knocked down. So knock me down." The watching warriors shifted uneasily. This made no sense to them. Honor meant accepting defeat gracefully. Fighting past the point of victory showed either ignorance or insanity. But Doyen kept standing, kept raising his fists, kept trying. After the 30th knockdown, Tanrek stopped attacking. He stared at the bloody human in front of him, trying to understand. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed, a small gesture of respect. "You are either the bravest or the dumbest creature I have met," Tanrek said. "Possibly both. We will continue tomorrow." The training became routine. Every morning, Doyen entered the ring. Every morning, Tanrek knocked him down repeatedly. But slowly, very slowly, Doyen learned. He could not match Varathian's strength, so he learned to move differently. Smaller targets, better angles, using their power against them. He taught them things too. Human grappling techniques, joint locks that worked regardless of how many arms someone had, pressure points that existed in most species. The warriors were skeptical at first, but Valrix ordered them to learn. Gradually, grudgingly, they began to see value in human methods. The real change came during the endurance test. Valrix announced it without warning. A 50-mile march through rough terrain, full combat gear, no stops. Standard training for Shadow Legion soldiers. Doyen would join them. If he fell behind, so be it. This was not about humans anymore. This was about whether he deserved to train with elite warriors. They started before dawn. 50 Varathian soldiers and 1 human, moving through the fortress's training grounds at a punishing pace. The warriors wore armor that would crush a human under its weight. They carried weapons heavier than Doyen's entire body, and they moved fast, each step eating up distance. Doyen kept pace. His gear was lighter, human-made, but the gravity in the fortress was higher than Earth standard. Every step was work. Every breath was earned. After 2 hours, the first Varathian began to slow. After 4, several were breathing hard. After 6, a few had to stop and rest. Varathians were built for explosive power, short bursts of incredible strength, but sustained effort over hours. That was different. Doyen kept walking, his legs ached. His lungs burned. Sweat soaked his clothes, but his pace never changed, steady, constant, 1 foot in front of the other. This was what humans did. They kept going. When prey ran, humans followed. When the hunt took days, humans did not stop. Evolution built them to outlast anything. By the 8-hour mark, only Tanrek and a handful of the strongest warriors still moved at full pace. The rest had fallen behind, struggling. Varathian pride kept them moving, but their bodies were reaching their limits. Doyen walked beside Tanrek, his breathing steady despite everything. The big Varathian looked at him with new eyes. How? Tanrek asked, his voice strained. You are smaller, weaker. How do you keep pace? Different evolution, Doyen replied. We chased our food until it collapsed from exhaustion. Sometimes for days. Our bodies adapted. Days, Tanrek repeated, disbelief clear in his voice. You hunted for days without stopping? Had to. We were not fast or strong, but we could keep going when everything else stopped. That was our advantage. They finished the march together. Most of the Shadow Legion limped in hours later, exhausted and humbled. They had learned something important. Strength came in different forms. And sometimes the weaker-looking opponent had hidden advantages. That night, for the first time, warriors invited Doyen to eat with them. The conversations were awkward, filled with cultural misunderstandings, but they were trying. And Tanrek sat next to him, treating him like an equal. Meanwhile, Hyejin and Soman worked on understanding the bigger picture. The ambassador had resources and contacts. She learned disturbing information. The Empire was not just studying Doyen. They were planning something larger. Tests, evaluations. They wanted to measure humanity as a whole. They are scared, Soman explained to Hyejin over dinner. The High Council heard about the broken spear. They want to know if humans are a threat or an opportunity. Doyen is their test case. What happens when the test is over? Hyejin asked. That depends on the results, Soman said grimly. If they decide humans are dangerous, Earth becomes a target. If they decide we are useful, we become tools. Either way, our independence is at risk. The month was passing quickly. 2 weeks remained. And Doyen still had no idea he was being evaluated not just as an individual, but as a representative of his entire species. Then Jinwoo arrived. The young Marine infiltrated the fortress through a cargo ship, armed and angry. He found Hyejin first, demanding to know where Doyen was held prisoner. She tried to explain that Doyen was not a prisoner, but Jinwoo would not listen. He came to rescue a hero. He would not leave without one. Security detected him within minutes. Alarms blared. Warriors moved to intercept. Jinwoo ran through corridors he did not know, trying to find Doyen, trying to save someone who did not need saving. He burst into the training grounds just as Doyen finished a session. Varathian soldiers moved to stop him, but Doyen raised a hand. Wait, Doyen said. He approached the scared, brave young man slowly. Jinwoo, right? I heard about you. Earth's military sent you? No, Jinwoo admitted. I came myself. Could not let them hold you. They are not holding me, Doyen said gently. I am here by choice, training, learning. Come on, put the weapon down before someone gets hurt. Jinwoo lowered his gun slowly, confusion replacing determination. This was not the rescue he imagined. Valric stepped forward, assessing the young human with interest. Another human who tries the impossible, the commander observed. Infiltrating a war fortress alone. Either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, Doyen said. Same as me. Kresh made an unexpected decision. Jinwoo could stay, train with them, learn alongside Doyen. 2 humans would provide more data than one, and perhaps young Jinwoo's military training would offer new perspectives. The young Marine had come to rescue Doyen. Instead, he became part of something larger. The month's end approached. One final test remained. A practical mission. Real stakes, real danger. Doyen would lead a mixed squad of humans and Varathians to clear out a pirate base on a nearby station. If he succeeded, the experiment was a success. If he failed, well, failures in military operations were permanent. When they arrived at the station and began their assault, they discovered something that changed everything. These were not pirates. They were refugees. Families fleeing Varathian oppression, aliens whose worlds had been conquered who wanted nothing more than to be free. Varathian protocol was clear. Unauthorized settlements in Imperial space were to be eliminated. No exceptions. The warriors looked to Doyen for orders. He had to decide, follow orders or follow conscience, and whatever he chose would define everything that came after. The station drifted in darkness, its running lights dim to avoid detection. Through the viewports, Doyen could see movement inside, not the tactical positions of fighters, not the organized chaos of a military base. Just people, families, children. His squad surrounded the station in attack formation. 10 Varathian warriors, including Tanrek, 2 humans, himself and Jinwoo, all armed, all ready. The mission parameters were clear. Eliminate the pirate threat. But these were not pirates. Scan shows 147 life signs, Heejin reported from their ship. Her voice carried concern. Multiple species. High percentage of juveniles. This does not match pirate profiles. Tanrek checked his own scanner and grunted acknowledgement. Refugees. They fled their worlds after conquest, settled here without authorization. The law is clear. The law says we kill them? Doyen asked. The law says unauthorized settlements are eliminated, Tanrek replied. They knew the risk when they came here. They chose defiance. They chose survival, Doyen countered. There is a difference. The squad waited in tense silence. They were supposed to be testing human leadership methods. But leadership meant making decisions, and Doyen was about to make one that would have consequences far beyond the station. We negotiate, Doyen said. No one dies today. Shock rippled through the squad. A Varathian warrior named Drask spoke up, his voice sharp with disbelief. Negotiate? With lawbreakers? You cannot be serious. We have orders. Orders to eliminate a threat, Doyen replied calmly. These people are not a threat. They have no weapons, no military capability. They are just trying to live. They broke Imperial law, Drask insisted. That makes them criminals. You are letting emotion override duty. This is weakness. No, Jinwoo said suddenly. The young Marine moved to stand beside Doyen. This is strength. Knowing when not to fight, when mercy serves better than violence. That is real power. The squad split down the middle. Half the Varathians sided with Drask, ready to follow orders. The other half, including Tanrek, stayed silent but did not move to attack. They were waiting to see what happened next. Doyen opened a communication channel to the station. A scared voice answered, speaking in broken common tongue. Please, we mean no harm. We will leave if you want. Just do not hurt the children. Nobody is getting hurt, Doyen said. But you cannot stay here. Imperial space is too dangerous. I need you to surrender peacefully. We will arrange transport to a neutral zone. You will be safe. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, you promise? No tricks? I promise. Drask moved to block the communication. You cannot make that promise. You do not have authority. This violates protocol. I am taking command of this squad. Tanrek stepped between them. The big warrior looked at Drask, then at Doyen, then made his choice. He stood beside the human. The human leads this mission, Tanrek said firmly. Those were our orders. If you disagree, take it up with Commander Valrix later. But right now we follow Doyen. 3 more Varathians moved to join Tanrek. That left 4 with Drask, a standoff. Warriors on both sides were armed and trained. If this went wrong, the squad would destroy itself. Doyen contacted Kresh directly through emergency channels. The Warlord answered immediately, his face appearing on the small screen. Report, Kresh commanded. The target is not a pirate base. It is a refugee settlement. 147 civilians, including children. I request permission to negotiate their peaceful relocation instead of elimination. Kresh's expression hardened. Imperial law does not recognize refugee status for those fleeing conquest. They are criminals. Then the law is wrong, Doyen said simply. Even through the screen he could feel the shock his words caused. Nobody told the warlord the law was wrong. Nobody challenged Imperial authority so directly. But Doyen had nothing to lose. If they wanted human perspective, here it was. These people pose no military threat, Doyen continued. Killing them wastes resources and creates martyrs. It turns potential citizens into enemies. It makes the Empire look cruel instead of strong. Mercy, in this case, is the strategic choice. Show strength through restraint, not through slaughter. Kresh was silent for a long moment. Behind him, other officers watched the exchange. This conversation was being recorded, analyzed, judged. The warlord's response would set a precedent. You speak of mercy as strength, Kresh said slowly. This is not Varathian thinking. Maybe it should be, Doyen replied. How many rebellions has brutality stopped? How many enemies has cruelty created? I am not saying the Empire should be weak. I am saying there is more than one kind of strength. The warlord looked at someone off-screen, then back at Doyen. When he spoke again, his voice carried weight. You have my permission. Negotiate their relocation. Show me this mercy you speak of. If it works, we will analyze why. If it fails, the consequences are yours. Understood, Doyen said. The connection ended. Doyen turned to face his squad. Drask stood rigid, barely controlling his anger. Tanrek looked thoughtful. The others just seemed confused. We have authorization, Doyen announced. Now we do this the right way. No violence. No threats. We help these people find a safe place and we show them the Empire can be reasonable. It took 6 hours to organize. The refugees were terrified at first, expecting execution. When Doyen and his squad came aboard unarmed, offering help instead of harm, they could barely believe it. Some cried, others just stared in shock. Yejin coordinated transport ships. Soman pulled diplomatic strings to arrange asylum in neutral territory. The refugees packed what little they owned, still half convinced this was a trick. But it was not. They left peacefully, heading toward a new home where the Empire would not pursue them. As the last transport ship departed, one of the refugees, an elderly alien with tired eyes, stopped to speak to Doyen. Thank you, the old being said in rough common tongue. I have seen much cruelty. This kindness I will remember. I will tell others. The Empire that showed mercy. After they left, the squad returned to the war fortress in silence. Nobody spoke about what happened. But something had changed. They all felt it. News of the Mercy mission spread quickly. Much too quickly. Within days, every corner of the Empire heard about it. Reactions were mixed. Many lower-ranked soldiers approved, tired of unnecessary violence. But high-ranking officers were outraged. Mercy was weakness. Compassion was failure. The Empire was built on strength, not sentiment. General Vorthan, a powerful military commander from the core worlds, sent a formal complaint to the High Council. Kresh had gone soft. The human was corrupting proper military discipline. This could not be allowed to continue. The High Council summoned Kresh to explain himself. Before he left, the warlord spoke with Doyen one final time. What you did will cause problems, Kresh said bluntly. The traditionalists see it as betrayal. They want you executed. They want me removed from command. Your mercy mission may have started a war. I am sorry, Doyen said and meant it. Do not be, Kresh replied. You did what you believed was right. You showed me that strength and mercy are not opposites. They can exist together. I will defend that belief to the High Council. But understand, this is bigger than one mission now. This is about the future of the Empire. That night, an assassination attempt was made on Kresh's life. 3 Shadow Legion warriors, loyal to the old ways, attacked him in his chambers. The warlord survived, but barely. He killed 2 attackers. The third escaped. In the aftermath, the Shadow Legion split. Some followed Kresh, believing in his new philosophy. Others left to join General Vorthan, who promised a return to traditional values. The Empire's most elite fighting force tore itself apart over a single question. Was mercy strength or weakness? And a human cargo pilot stood at the center of it all, wondering how breaking a spear led to breaking an empire. The war fortress felt empty now. Half the Shadow Legion had left, taking their weapons and their loyalty elsewhere. They went to General Vorthon, who promised them a return to the old ways. No more mercy. No more weakness. Just pure Varathian strength. Those who stayed with Kresh were not sure they made the right choice. They gathered in the training grounds, looking at each other with uncertainty. Tanrek stood among them, along with Valrix and about 30 other warriors. Not enough to hold the fortress if Vorthon attacked. Not enough to matter in a real war. Doyen watched from the observation deck. Hyejin stood beside him, her face tight with worry. "We should leave," she said quietly, "before this gets worse. Before we are blamed for all of it." "We cannot," Soman said, joining them. The ambassador looked tired, like she had not slept in days. "I received word from Earth. They disavow Doyen's actions. They fear Varathian retaliation, and cannot risk protecting someone who destabilized the Empire. As of now, he is stateless. No government will take him." The words hit Doyen like a physical blow. No home, no country, nowhere to go. He broke the spear and lost everything. "That is not fair," Jinwu said angrily. "He did the right thing. He saved lives." "Politics do not care about fair," Soman replied. "Earth needs the Empire more than they need Doyen. That is the reality." Kresh entered the observation deck, moving slowly. The assassination attempt left him wounded, though he tried to hide it. He looked at Doyun with something approaching sympathy. "I have an offer," the warlord said. "Stay, help me build something new. A legion based on merit and cooperation, not just conquest. It will not be easy. Most of the Empire opposes us, but if we succeed, we can change everything. And if we fail," Doyen asked, "then we die trying," Kresh said simply. "But at least we will have tried. That is the human way, is it not? Attempting the impossible?" Doyen thought about it. He could run, try to disappear somewhere in the vast galaxy, live as a refugee himself, or he could stay and fight for something that mattered. People believed in what he started. If he left now, he would abandon them. "I will stay," Doyen said. "But not just me. We need others, other species, other perspectives. If this is going to work, it cannot be just Varathians and humans. It needs to be everyone." Kresh nodded slowly. "The Reformed Legion. Not conquest, but cooperation. Yes, we will try." Word spread quickly. Doyen was staying. Kresh was building something new. Species across the Empire heard and responded, some with mockery, others with hope. A few dozen volunteers arrived over the next weeks. Former slaves, freed workers, aliens who wanted to believe the Empire could change. They were a strange collection. No uniforms, no standard equipment. Dozens of different species who barely spoke the same language. But they had something the old Shadow Legion never had. They chose to be there. They believed in something. Training them was chaos. Varathian combat methods did not work for smaller species. Human tactics confused those who relied on natural weapons. Every species had their own strengths and weaknesses. Making them work together required patience and creativity. Hyejin became the coordinator, using her military experience to organize the mess. Jinwu trained mixed squads in human fighting techniques. Tanrek taught Varathian discipline. Valrix handled overall strategy. And Doyun somehow became the leader who kept them all focused. He did not want to be a leader. Leaders made speeches and inspired people. He was just a cargo pilot who refused to quit. But the soldiers looked to him anyway, because he broke the unbreakable, because he chose mercy over violence, because he stayed when he could have run. General Vorthon was not idle during this time. He gathered supporters, built alliances, and prepared for war. The traditionalist faction controlled most of the Empire's military. They had ships, weapons, and warriors. The Reformed Legion had ideals and a broken fortress. The attack came without warning. 20 warships appeared in orbit surrounding the fortress. Vorthon's voice echoed through communication channels, formal and cold. "Kresh, you have betrayed the Empire and embraced weakness. Surrender now and your death will be honorable. Resist and everyone in that fortress dies with you." Kresh looked at his small force, maybe 200 soldiers against thousands. No hope of victory through strength. But maybe victory was not the point. "We will not surrender," Kresh replied. "Come and take us if you can." The first wave hit hard. Assault ships launched from the warships, filled with elite soldiers. They expected quick victory against an outnumbered, disorganized force. They were wrong. The Reformed Legion fought unlike anything Vorthon's forces expected. Small species used the fortress's tight corridors to their advantage. Humans employed guerrilla tactics, hitting and running. Varathian reformists held key positions with disciplined determination. Every species contributed their unique abilities. Doyen commanded from the central hub, coordinating defense. He was not a natural tactician, but he understood his people. He knew what each group could do. He gave them opportunities to use their strengths. The battle lasted for hours. The fortress held barely, but everyone knew they could not win through combat. Eventually, numbers would overwhelm them. Then something unexpected happened. Ships arrived from other sectors. Not Imperial warships, civilian vessels, cargo haulers, converted transports. They positioned themselves between Vorthan's fleet and the fortress. A voice came through, speaking in broken common tongue. It was the old refugee Doyen had helped. We heard about the fight. We came to help. You showed us mercy. Now we show you loyalty. More ships arrived, species from across the Empire who heard about the Reformed Legion. They brought supplies, medical aid. Some even brought weapons. They were not soldiers, but they were willing to stand beside those who believed in change. Vorthan found himself in an impossible position. He could destroy the fortress, but that meant killing hundreds of civilians who came to help. That would create martyrs across the Empire. It would prove that mercy worked while brutality failed. The general withdrew his fleet but sent one final message. This is not over, Kresh. The High Council will judge you, and judgment will not be kind. The victory felt hollow. They survived, but barely. And now they face something worse than war. Politics. The High Council summoned everyone to the Imperial capital. Kresh, Doyen, Vorthan, and representatives from both factions. They would settle this matter officially. Decide the future of the Empire in a formal hearing. Soman explained what that meant. The High Council rarely intervenes. When they do, their word is absolute. They will examine both sides, listen to arguments, then make a decision. If they side with Vorthan, the Reformed Legion is finished. If they side with Kresh, traditionalists will be forced to accept change. Everything depends on this hearing. How do we convince them? Doyen asked. You cannot, Somin said bluntly. The High Council are the oldest, most traditional warlords in the Empire. They built this system. Why would they change it? Because it is failing, Kresh said. The Empire is stagnant. Rebellions increase every year. Conquered species resist constantly. The old ways are not working anymore. We offer something new. And if they do not care about that? Hejin asked. Then we tried, Kresh replied. And trying matters. He looked at Doyen when he said it. The human who attempted the impossible and succeeded, maybe they could do it again. They traveled to the Imperial capital in a small convoy. The Reformed Legion stayed behind to defend the fortress. Only key figures made the journey. Kresh, Valrix, Tanrek, Doyun, Hyejin, Somin, and Jinwu. 7 people who would speak for thousands. The capital world was massive, ancient, covered in monuments to conquest. Everywhere Doyen looked, he saw evidence of empire. Statues of warlords. Buildings made from materials from conquered worlds. Museums displaying trophies from defeated species. The High Council met in a chamber older than human space travel. 12 massive thrones arranged in a circle, each one occupied by a warlord who had ruled for centuries. These were the founders, the originals, the ones who built the empire from nothing. They looked at Doyun with interest but not hostility. To them, he was a curiosity, a human who accomplished something interesting. Nothing more. The eldest counselor, Draxon, spoke first. His voice was ancient as stone grinding against stone. We have heard many things about recent events. A broken spear, a split legion, a human teaching mercy to warriors. Unusual times indeed. Now we will hear arguments and make judgment. Vorthan, speak first. The general stood confident and strong. He spoke of tradition, of strength, of the Empire's glory. He painted Kresh as weak, corrupted by alien ideas. He painted Doyun as a threat, spreading dangerous philosophies that would destroy everything they built. It was a good speech, logical, powerful, hard to argue against. Then Kresh stood. And he did something nobody expected. He gestured to Doyen. Let the human speak, Kresh said. He started this. Let him explain why. Doyen stood before the 12 most powerful beings in half the galaxy. The High Council watched him with ancient eyes, waiting. He was not a speaker, not a politician, just a man who broke a spear and changed everything by accident. I do not have fancy words, Doyen began. I am a cargo pilot. I fix things and fly ships. That is all I know how to do, but I can tell you why I stayed. Draxon leaned forward slightly. Speak then, human. We are listening. I stayed because people believed in something, Doyen said. Not in me. In the idea that things could be different. Better. Species from across your empire came to that fortress not because they were ordered to, but because they wanted to. They chose to stand beside us. That never happened before in your empire. Nobody chooses to serve. They are forced. They are weak, one counselor interrupted, following sentiment instead of strength. No, Doyen said firmly. They are stronger because they choose. A slave fights because he must. A volunteer fights because he believes. Which warrior would you rather have in your legion? Silence greeted his question. The counselors exchanged glances. Your empire is failing, Doyen continued, his voice steady. Not because your warriors are weak, because your system creates enemies. Every world you conquer breeds resentment. Every species you enslave waits for a chance to rebel. You spend all your strength holding down those you defeated instead of building something worth protecting. Bold words, Vorthen said coldly. But words do not win wars. Neither does endless fighting, Doyen replied. You have been at war for how long? Centuries? And what has it gained you? More enemies, more rebels, more resources wasted fighting fires you started. That is not strength. That is exhaustion. Draxon raised one massive hand, silencing further interruptions. The human speaks uncomfortable truths. Continue. Doyen took a breath. Give us a chance. Let the Reformed Legion prove cooperation works. 3 border systems. Grant us control for 1 year. If we fail, execute us. If we succeed, consider that maybe there is more than one kind of strength. Those systems are hostile, another counselor said. Traditional garrisons barely hold them. How will your mixed collection of species do better? By making them want to be held, Doyen said. By offering something better than occupation. By showing that the empire can protect without crushing. By earning loyalty instead of demanding it. The council deliberated among themselves, speaking in Old Vorathian that Doyen could not understand. Minutes passed. Then Draxon spoke again. We grant your request. 3 systems. 1 year. But understand the terms. If those systems fall to enemies, the Reformed Legion is dissolved and its leaders executed. If they fall to rebellion, the same result. You must prove that cooperation succeeds where conquest struggles. Failure means death for you and all who follow you. I understand, Doyen said. Then go. Show us if humans truly have wisdom to match their stubbornness. The 3 border systems were exactly as bad as warned. Hostile populations, pirate raids, separatist movements, infrastructure falling apart from neglect. The previous Varathian garrisons left behind burned-out settlements and bitter memories. The Reformed Legion arrived not with warships, but with cargo vessels. They brought supplies instead of weapons, medical teams instead of soldiers. They came to help, not to occupy. The locals were suspicious. Every other time the Empire came, it took. Why would this time be different? Doyen met with local leaders personally. Not demanding, asking. What did they need? What would make their lives better? What could the Reformed Legion provide? The requests were simple: clean water, reliable power, protection from pirates without occupation, fair trade agreements, basic infrastructure. Things the Empire could have provided easily but never did because conquered peoples did not deserve comfort. The Reformed Legion got to work. Human engineers fixed water systems. Varathian warriors trained local security forces instead of replacing them. Other species contributed their unique skills. Slowly, things improved. It was messy work, nothing clean or efficient about it. Arguments happened constantly. Cultural misunderstandings caused problems. Some locals remained hostile, convinced this was a trick. Progress came in inches, not miles, but it was progress. 3 months passed. The system stabilized. Trade routes reopened. Small businesses started operating again. People began to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Then disaster arrived. A massive pirate fleet entered the systems, led by a warlord named Craxus. He commanded over 40 warships and thousands of fighters. His message was simple. The Reformed Legion was weak. Their mercy was cowardice. He would prove it by destroying them and claiming the systems for himself. The Reformed Legion had maybe 12 ships capable of combat. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy who wanted to make an example of them. Valrix ran the numbers. We cannot win through direct combat. We need to evacuate. No, Doyen said. We stay and fight. That is suicide, Hedgen said. You saw the fleet. We will be slaughtered. Maybe, Doyen admitted. But if we run now, everything we built means nothing. We told these people we would protect them. If we leave them to die, we prove Forthan was right. That mercy is weakness. Kresh stood beside him. The human is correct. We stay. We fight. And if we die proving something worth dying for. They prepared for battle. It looked hopeless. But then something happened that nobody expected. The locals armed themselves, not as soldiers but as defenders. Merchant ships joined the fight. Mining vessels retrofitted with weapons. Transport craft modified for combat. Hundreds of civilians who chose to stand and fight for their homes. A local leader contacted Doyen, his voice firm despite obvious fear. You could have run. You stayed. Now we stay with you. We fight together. More ships arrived from other sectors. Species who heard about the Reformed Legion. Former refugees who remembered mercy. Workers who wanted to believe in something better. They came not because they were ordered, but because they chose to. The fleet that faced Craxus was still smaller, still less powerful, but it was unified in a way pirate forces never were. Every ship fought not for plunder or conquest, but for something they believed in. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Pirates had better weapons and more experience, but the defenders had something stronger: purpose. Small ships used guerrilla tactics. Civilian vessels protected each other. Reformed Legion soldiers fought alongside locals as equals. Doyen commanded from a modified cargo ship, coordinating the chaos. He was not a great military leader, but he understood his people. He knew what they could do, and he trusted them to do it. Craxus challenged Doyen to single combat, confident of victory. They fought on the hull of a damaged station, surrounded by debris and fire. The pirate warlord was massive, experienced, heavily armed. Doyen had his bare hands and determination. It was not a fair fight. Craxus beat him down repeatedly, broke ribs, crushed bones, left him bleeding in the void. But Doyen kept getting up. Every time he fell, he stood again, because that was what humans did. They endured. Craxus grew tired, frustrated, confused. Why would this creature not stay down? He made mistakes, left openings, and finally, through a combination of luck, skill, and sheer stubborn will, Doyen won, not through superior strength, through superior endurance. The pirate warlord fell. The pirate fleet, seeing their leader defeated by a human in hand-to-hand combat, lost morale. They retreated, unwilling to die for a cause their leader could not win. The border systems were saved. The Reformed Legion survived. And all across the Empire, people heard about it. A mixed force of species defeated a pirate fleet through cooperation. Civilians chose to fight beside soldiers. Mercy proved stronger than conquest. The High Council sent observers to investigate. They saw rebuilt infrastructure, thriving trade, species working together, former enemies becoming partners. It was messy and imperfect, but it worked. 3 months later, the Council summoned everyone again. Draxon spoke for all of them. The experiment succeeded. The Reformed Legion will become an official part of the Empire, operating with autonomy. Warlord Kresh is promoted to High Counselor. The Empire will begin gradual reforms based on your model. We move slowly, but we move forward. Vorthan protested, but the decision was final. The old ways were failing. New methods were necessary. The Empire would adapt or die, and adaptation meant change. That night, Doyen sat in the observation deck of his old cargo ship, looking at stars. Hyajin found him there. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it. We tried," Doyen corrected. "And it worked. This time. Tomorrow might be different." "Always the optimist," Hyajin said with a small smile. "Just realistic," Doyen replied. "Change is hard. Keeping change is harder. But at least now we have a chance. That is all I ever wanted. A chance." One more battle remained, but that was a story for another day. 5 years passed. The Empire transformed slowly, like a mountain changing shape over centuries. Not dramatic, not fast, but definitely changing. The reformed Legion grew from a few hundred volunteers to several thousand. Species from across the Empire joined, drawn by the promise of equality and cooperation. They were no longer just defenders of 3 border systems. They became a peacekeeping force that operated wherever the High Council sent them. Tanrek commanded the Legion now, leading with a combination of Varathian discipline and human flexibility. He was a different warrior than the one who first fought Doyen in the training circle, harder in some ways, softer in others, better overall. Valrix established the first multi-species military academy on the capital world. Young soldiers from dozens of species trained together, learning from each other's strengths. It was controversial. Traditionalists hated it, but the graduates proved themselves in combat repeatedly, and results mattered more than tradition. Jinwu became an instructor at the academy, teaching human combat philosophy to new generations. He was no longer the hot-headed young Marine who infiltrated the war fortress. Experience and responsibility had matured him into someone worth following. Hyajin represented humanity on the High Council as an official ambassador. Earth was no longer a backwater world to be ignored. It was a partner, recognized for contributing valuable perspectives to galactic politics. She negotiated trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. Human colonies spread across the Empire, welcomed rather than tolerated. Kresh guided the Empire's reforms from his position on the High Council. The once brutal Warlord became known for fairness and measured wisdom. He still carried scars from the assassination attempt, visible reminders that change came with a price. But he paid that price willingly. Salman retired from diplomatic service and wrote a book about the events. It became required reading at the Academy. Future leaders studied how one impossible moment cascaded into system-wide transformation. And Doyen? He went back to flying cargo ships. Not because he was forced to. The High Council offered him positions, leadership roles, honors. He refused them all. He was not a politician or a general. He was a cargo pilot who did what needed doing, and what he needed now was normalcy. His ship was the same one he flew before everything changed. Hyajin helped him keep it running between her council duties. They still worked together sometimes, falling back into old patterns. Navigation, cargo checks. Long silences filled with comfortable understanding, but Doyen was not forgotten. Could not be forgotten. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. The human who broke the spear. The one who showed mercy. The man who changed an empire. They wanted to hear his story. Wanted advice. Wanted him to solve their problems the way he solved the Empire's problems. He always told them the same thing. He was just a man who refused to quit. Nothing special. Nothing magical. Just stubborn. Most did not believe him. They needed him to be more than that. Needed him to be a hero. But Doyen knew the truth. Heroes were just ordinary people who did not give up when giving up was easier. One day, while making a delivery to a reformed colony world, he met a young Varathian cadet. Fresh from the academy, eager and nervous. The cadet recognized him immediately. Captain Doyen, the one from the stories? Doyen sighed but nodded. Yes, that one. Can I ask you something? Everyone talks about how you broke the spear, but nobody explains how you really did it. What was the secret? Doyen looked at his hands. The scars from that day were still visible. Faint white lines across his palms. He thought about how to answer. This question came up often, and he still struggled to explain it properly. I did not break the spear, he said finally. I just showed everyone it could be broken. Once people know something is possible, they find ways to do impossible things themselves. That is the real human strength, not muscle or endurance. It is showing others they are stronger than they think. The cadet considered this. So it was not about physical strength at all? It was about not giving up, Doyen replied. About trying when failure seemed certain. About standing up one more time, then you get knocked down. That is something anyone can do, regardless of species or size or natural advantages. You just have to decide that quitting is not an option. Is that what you teach at the academy? I do not teach at the academy, Doyen said. I fly cargo. But if I did teach, that is what I would say. Find your strength, use it wisely. Never give up on what matters, and remember that cooperation makes everyone stronger. The cadet saluted, a gesture of respect used across all species now. Then he left, heading back to his duties with renewed purpose. Doyen returned to his ship. Hyejin was already there, running pre-flight checks. Another fan? She asked. Another curious kid, Doyen replied. They always ask the same questions. And you always give the same answers, Hyejin observed. Does it bother you? The attention? Doyen thought about it. Sometimes. But if talking to kids helps them believe they can do hard things, then it is worth it. Besides, in a few more years, people will forget about the human who broke a spear. New stories will replace old ones. I doubt that, Hyejin said. What you did changed too much. They will remember for a long time. Maybe, Doyen allowed. But the important thing is not that they remember me. It is that they remember the lesson. That impossible things become possible when you refuse to give up. They left the planet and entered open space. Through the viewport, Doyen could see other ships. Dozens of species traveling peacefully through routes that once only knew conquest. Merchant vessels, science ships, colony transports, tourist cruisers, all moving freely, protected by the Reformed Legion. The Empire was still an empire, still powerful, still dominant in its region of space. But it was different now. It protected rather than oppressed. It cooperated rather than conquered. It offered partnership instead of demanding submission. Not everyone accepted the changes. Pockets of resistance remained. Traditionalists who wanted the old ways back. Separatists who would never trust the empire regardless of reforms. Pirates who took advantage of newly opened trade routes. Problems still existed, but progress was not about solving every problem. It was about making things better than they were. And things were better. Measurably, provably, better. Tanrek contacted them through secure channels. Doyen, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. Possible conflict between mining colonies and local species. Can you deliver emergency supplies while we negotiate? That is what cargo pilots do, Doyen replied. Send coordinates. Thank you, old friend. The Legion appreciates it. Hyejin plotted the course. It would take 3 days to reach the Outer Rim. Plenty of time to prepare supplies and plan the delivery. Just another job. Just another mission, except it was not just another job. Every delivery supported the new empire. Every supply run proved that cooperation worked. Every mission showed that different species could work together toward common goals. Doyen understood that now. He might be just a cargo pilot, but cargo pilots mattered. Everyone mattered. That was the whole point. Years ago, he stood in a throne room and broke an unbreakable spear. Everyone called it impossible. They were right. It should have been impossible. But he tried anyway because not trying meant giving up. And giving up meant losing everything. That one impossible moment changed everything. Not because he was special. Not because he had unique powers or abilities. But because he showed what determination could accomplish. He proved that ordinary people could do extraordinary things if they refused to quit. And that lesson spread. From one fortress to 3 systems. From 3 systems to the entire empire. From the empire to dozens of species who learned that they too could accomplish the impossible. The Varathian Empire was still the most powerful force in its region of space. But now that power came from cooperation rather than conquest, from loyalty earned rather than forced, from strength tempered with mercy, it was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was better. And better was enough. The ship accelerated toward the Outer Rim, carrying supplies that would prevent conflict. Behind it, the reformed empire continued its slow transformation. Ahead of it, new challenges waited to be faced. Doyen sat in the pilot's seat, hands steady on controls worn smooth by use. His scars had faded but never disappeared. Reminders of the day he attempted the impossible and succeeded. But the real reminder was not the scars. It was the galaxy itself. Changed, different, better. Because one man refused to accept defeat. Because one impossible moment rippled outward until it touched everything. He was just a cargo pilot. Just a man doing his job. But sometimes that was enough to change the universe. Sometimes impossible things happened because someone was stubborn enough to try. And that was the most human thing of all.